According to published reports last spring, Army Private Bradley Manning brought a homemade CD to work with him labeled Gaga. He then popped the CD into his desktop and started lip-syncing Lady Gaga while erasing the CD and refilling it with downloaded U.S. government secrets. He continued to make his coworkers feel they were in the company of the office idiot instead of a spy. Private Manning is currently awaiting trial at the Quantico Marine Base in Virginia on earlier charges of leaking documents relating to the war in Iraq and is suspected of also having leaked the latest batch of classified diplomatic cables. Hillary Clinton said the leaks, quote, tear at the fabric of the proper function of responsible government, endanger innocent people, and sabotage efforts at world peace. And then she undermined her dramatic language with something that sounds a bit more realistic.
I can tell you that in my conversations, at least one of my counterparts said to me, well, don't worry about it. You should see what we say about you. So I think that this is well understood in the diplomatic community as part of the give and take.
Are the document dumps heroic or treasonous, good for democracy or dangerous to global security, or just a harmless, fun peek into an overly sensitive government? Joining me now are Mika Sifry, co-founder of the Personal Democracy Forum and editor of TechPresident.com, and Jamie Rubin, former Assistant Secretary of State during the Clinton administration. Jamie, what is the harmful about these leaks? Which part of Hillary Clinton's statement should we take seriously? The one with all the dramatic language at tearing at the fabric of our government, to the one about, well, you know, diplomats know this is the way we talk backstage?
Well, they're both true. There is a tearing at the fabric of government in the following sense. The State Department's only real power. It doesn't have the military weapons like the Pentagon. It doesn't have the financial weapons of the Treasury Department. What it has is relationships and trust built with foreign governments and individuals in foreign countries. That's its coin of the realm. That's what it has. Clearly, this has undermined that. It hasn't destroyed it. It hasn't torn the fabric of government, but it has begun the tearing process. I would say that it's harmed our ability to get other governments to tell us important things in a timely way. It doesn't necessarily mean that the world is going to come to an end, and I think probably some of the words are overstated, but I'm sure there are going to be cases in the future where foreign government officials are going to think twice about telling our ambassador something important. That can't be a good thing. My problem here is that it's undifferentiated. It's not about one policy that WikiLeaks may oppose or one example where they've shown hypocrisy where one thing is said in public or one thing is said in private. It's undifferentiated attack on all of the State Department's ability to deal with foreign governments. It hasn't destroyed it, but it's harmed it.
Mika, how harmful do you see these revelations?
Well, I really disagree. I actually think that far more important is our ability to trust that our government is acting properly in our name, and the only way that we can have that trust is if we can know what the government is doing. And unfortunately, our government and many other governments don't tell the truth to their own people about what they're doing abroad. We've learned this too many times now, that too much is kept from us. And frankly, if I have to choose between the government deciding what I can know about what it's doing versus what the media can bring to me and let me judge for myself, I vastly prefer the latter. And we're living in a new age now where a site like WikiLeaks, which can't be accused of treason, despite Sarah Palin's desire, because it's transnational. It's not based in the United States. It's based all over the world on servers that we can't touch, has the ability to take documents from whistleblowers and put them out in full view. And it will be messy, as Mr. Rubin says. It is not a perfectly clean process, but the sum benefit, I think, is to enhance democracy and ultimately to enhance the things that Secretary of State Clinton says she's for, such as more open governments, governments that honor human rights and expand democracy overseas.
Jamie, isn't there a lesson here just about governing practice going forward. You and I were working in government when email just started to take hold. I was working in the Senate, 1993, beginning of the Clinton administration, and I realized pretty quickly when I started playing around with email, I am not going to email this one. I'm going to call George Stephanopoulos on the phone, say this to him verbally, and to no one else, because I don't want anyone else to ever know it. I mean, isn't it just time that the diplomatic corps caught up with the reality of how to keep communication secret? You can't write these things down.
I think you're right, and I think that happens, and I think the cable itself is a bit of an archaic form. The ambassadors cable to the Secretary of State before arriving in the country, as if the Secretary of State hasn't been talking to the foreign minister of that country on the phone 3 times that week before she got there. But there are conversations that take place that are very important, that occasionally have to be written down, because one leader might remember it differently, or one leader might try to walk it back, agree to something, and then try to change it. And so occasionally, and the example that we've been using during the course of the day is the government in Yemen saying, yes, go ahead and attack these terrorists in our country. We'll say we're doing it, even though we know you're doing it. Now, that's not the U.S. government lying. This is where I disagree with my colleague. That's the Yemeni government lying. And we, as the United States, we have to respect that. It's their government. We can't tell them what to do if we want to get cooperation and destroy a terrorist cell that might, as we know, in fact, threaten the United States and threaten our people. So sometimes, not all the time, and not even most of the time, but sometimes you have to write it down.
Should the government be able to keep that Yemeni communique secret?
Well, I don't know whether that particular communique needs to be kept secret or not, and I think, again, I would err on the side of openness. I think it is a completely debatable subject whether we should be intervening in all these countries around the world in the ways that we are, with very little public oversight, knowledge of what's being done in our name and with our money.
Jamie, on the erring on the side of openness, I think what Mika's talking about is, if we have a pile of 250,000 documents that are all called super secret, and you must not see any of them, surely there is way too much fake secrecy in that pile. And the way to hold on to the Yemeni secret, if it's really valuable, is have a much smaller pile of secrets that are easier to hold on to. Isn't that one of the important solutions?
Absolutely.
Reduce the amount of secrecy?
Absolutely. The most of this stuff that you'll read, and you'll say, well, why is that secret? Maybe it should be what's called, unclassified but limited use, meaning you don't want to spread it around, but there's nothing harmful in it. There is way too much secrecy. But I think the real issue here is who's doing the oversight and who makes the decision. And my colleague here is comfortable with The Guardian or Der Spiegel,
the New York Times.
The New York Times.
But if it were just the New York Times, I'd feel a lot better. But they're basically,
because they actually did exclude some of this.
And more importantly, they said they erred on the side of openness because they knew the other guys were going to publish. And in the internet era, there's no difference between logging on to Der Spiegel and logging on to the New York Times website. So it's not as if we have the kind of careful media scrutiny that we used to have. And that's what we have a Congress for. You work for the senators. That's what we have the Senate Foreign Relations for. That's what we have representatives.
The last word on this segment for tonight. We're going to have many more discussions of WikiLeaks. Mika Sifry of TechPresident.com and Jamie Rubin, former Assistant Secretary of State. Thank you both for your time tonight.
Thank you.